To start off, I just wanted to share, I recently learned a stat that was actually quite scary to me when I saw it. It was part of the Gallup Global Workplace Survey, and it revealed that within the UK, only 10% of the current workforce are feeling engaged and motivated by their current roles. Now, I don't know about you, but that for me felt quite scary. And I think within the current context of the technological revolution that we're seeing a lot today in many seminar rooms and many stands around AI, it's quite frightening because whereas there's a lot of positivity and energy around it in places like today, I would bet that back home, back at base with some of your teams, there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of concern around what that actually means for them and their roles. So this is where this comes in. This is why I'm excited today to share with you how embracing your superpowers and your flaws can unleash your potential, your people's potential, and really untap some energy, enthusiasm, and performance in your teams. Right, so flaws. Flaws are demoralizing, right? I remember being in my early 20s and early in my career, and I dreaded every time I had an upcoming performance review because I knew all the focus was going to be around how can I fix my flaws, or as they were often sugar-coated in HR speak, my development areas. And the thing that really turned things on its head for me and was like a eureka moment was when I had a new manager who flipped it on its head and said, look, the thing you need to be doing is not focusing on your flaws, it's focus on the things that you're already great at and make yourself even greater at them, because those are the things that are going to become your distinctive USP. And furthermore, if you're working and doing things that are based around the things that you're great at, you're going to enjoy your work that much more. I think I'm going to have to go over here to do the clicker. And so what he was basically telling me was I needed to embrace my superpowers more. Because superpowers are great. They're exciting. They're empowering. They're motivating. And the thing that really, I think, is the secret is not only are they empowering and motivating, and we should all get behind them, but we also need to be at peace with both our superpowers and our flaws. Because with every great superpower comes a kryptonite. For me, my superpower is that I have really great big picture thinking. But my kryptonite is that I have terrible attention to detail. So if you see any typos on the screen, please forgive me. And so being at peace with both is really important because I could spend all my time trying to fix my kryptonite, but it would distract from the stuff I'm great at. So by being at peace with it, I can concentrate on my big picture thinking and make more impacts in that way. A brief background to me. So my name's Chris. I live in Haywards Heath with my wife and 3 daughters who are currently obsessed with a combo of Frozen and K-pop Demon Hunters. Outside of my day job, I'm a trustee for a charity called Dementia Support. And I also host the local People Planet Pint networking group, which is for businesses that are sustainability minded. And as this handsome little chap, Neo, not me, the handsome little chap Neo is, representing, I am a falcon. That is my personality. So that's the interactive bit that you'll get to try in a minute. And what that means for me is that I'm always coming up with new ideas. I'm very fast thinking, but I also have a terrible attention span. But that's okay, because as we appreciated earlier, we need to be at peace with both our superpowers and our flaws. And the other part around it is once we're aware of those facts and we're comfortable with it, we can then start to team up with people who excel at the things that you're not necessarily great at. When you come together, you become much richer than the sum of your parts. So in this image, the falcon represents me and the panda represents my business partner, Jen, who you can see over there. Say hello, there you go. So Jen is a panda and her strengths really complement mine. So she's great at organization, she's a social butterfly, some of the things that I'm not naturally strong at myself. And we came together over 10 years ago now. We both worked at the Goodwood Estate. I was the head of marketing there. And we had 5 very enjoyable years dressing up in vintage garb, having a whale of a time, but also building a team of superstars who helped us to consistently sell out the events faster and faster and build the whole brand there. But then COVID hit and I had to put the whole team, including Jen, onto furlough. And so I asked her to do some free consulting for dementia support because I thought they would massively benefit from her brain being across the brand. And also, I was just frankly jealous of all the free time she had at the beach. So she played that work back to me and the team at Dementia Support. And that's when we had our aha moment of let's create our own consultancy. Let's create this new business, Growth Animals. Let's take all of that experience we've had from building brands, building teams, and give it to the business world and really have this mission around helping people to tap into the best version of themselves so that they can then excel in their roles. People often ask us why we call growth animals, and the simple answer is growth. Well, we wanted to start with the end in mind. So, growth is often the objective for businesses, whether that's growth in profitability, growth in customer retention, growth in staff engagement, whatever that might be, that's what we're trying to grow for you. And then the animals bit is a lot more fun. So we discovered this free animal quiz while we were at Goodwood, and it's based on Carl Jung's personality theory, and basically it spits out an animal personality. It's incredibly insightful for something that's so quick to do. And so we spoke to the developer of it, who is an author and researcher in personality theory called David Hodgson. And with him, we developed a version for ourselves, which you're going to try very shortly. For David, he wanted it to be something that was accessible to all, unlike other variants you might have tried, like a Myers-Briggs or DISC profile, because he was keen for young people to be able to utilize it to try and understand what career roles might be right for them. So he had it on a free site for about 10 years, and in that time was able to gather some really useful insights around the types of people, what personality types you tend to find in the UK. And then with him, we built on it to explore areas like, what does it mean for you as a brand, as a business, as a leader, as a partner, and what are your superpowers? So I'm going to let you have a go yourself, because knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, as Aristotle said. And I'm going to invite you now to scan the QR code. We've got the URL there as well, if you prefer. And if you are having any troubles with your internet at all, just take a picture of this and you can have a go later in your own time. If you do get onto the page okay, then press take the quiz. And my one piece of advice is to work through the 4 quick-fire pages of questions as instinctively as possible. Has everyone captured that okay? Great. Yeah, I can't see any phones out. That's good. So while you're working through that, I'll just explain what the 4 pages are trying to understand. So the first page of questions is trying to get to the root of, are you more of an extrovert or an introvert? Now, none of us are one thing or the other. We all sit on a scale on this. I often consider myself to be an extroverted introvert because I love doing things like this, coming and talking to you, but then I also need some alone time afterwards to regenerate my batteries. So that's why I say answer as instinctively as possible, because what this wants to do is understand which way do you veer more than the other. The second page is exploring how you think. So are you more of a real world thinker or are you an imagined world thinker? If you're real world, you'll probably be more analytical, more scientific in your approach, whereas imagined world thinkers are a bit more theoretical. The third page is looking at how you approach a task. So are you task first, in that your primary concern is getting the task done on time? Or are you people first, in that your primary concern is how are the people involved going to be feeling? And then lastly, we look at your general approach to life. Do you live by the rules, or are you more spontaneous and live in the moment? So once you've worked your way through those, you should hopefully see a results page that's something like that. Lots of heads down, so I think you're still working your way through. When you get your results page, you'll see you immediately have some strengths. You've got a motto there that is consistent with your approach. And then you can also scroll down and then toggle, what do your results mean for you as a person, as a brand, as a business, as a leader, as a partner, and also what are your superpowers? So how are we doing? Has anyone got their results now? Yeah, good. Some nodding. How about this side of the room? Have you got your results? Great, great. Okay, so obviously have a good read of them on your way home later on, but we'll explore a bit more into those now. So what you will have yourself on your screen is you're one of 16 different personality types. But also what we've got here is they fall into four main groupings. So you've got the bears, sea animals, cats, and birds. And within those groupings, you've got some familiar traits. So when we talk about something like a leadership style, bears will typically be the rule setters. Sea animals will be more nurturing and empathetic in their style. The cats tend to be more hands-off, whereas the birds are more strategic and logical in their leadership style. The bit I like in here is what's their favorite question. So as a bird, I can definitely resonate with always wanting to ask the question why. Probably explains why I'm cursed by my kids saying that all the time as well. So now I want to focus on your superpowers, because I touched on it before and talked about how motivating these are for you, for your people, for your teams. And I wanted to share this quote by Lena Waite, who's the first African-American woman to win the Primetime Emmy Award in the US. She said the things that make us different, those are our superpowers. And in the context of everything we're seeing today, in the way that the world is, the way that we're leaning to more AI, this couldn't be more true. Because by embracing and celebrating our superpowers, it gives us something to really go for personally, commercially, societally as well. It gives us a real important role. And where these superpowers come from in terms of, in the context of our animal instincts quiz, is that they come from a field of psychology called positive psychology that comes from an American psychologist, Martin Seligman. He created it because he felt that psychology was too negative. It was too much about how you fix people. And so he created this idea of superpowers being something that people can tap into and embrace to find meaning and happiness in their lives, in their work. And so that's why we have them as part of this quiz. And you'll see in your results that every animal personality typically has 6 that are relevant to them. And what we recommend you do is look at these and identify the 2 or 3 that really resonate with you, because those are your unique set of superpowers. And then the other interesting aspects we have in here is called the shadow animal. So if you go onto the partner as a partner page, at the bottom it will tell you what your shadow animal is. And the shadow animal is the exact opposite personality type to yourself. So in the context of the earlier conversation of tapping into your superpowers and your flaws, these shadow animals are really interesting because these are the ones who ultimately have superpowers in the areas where you have your flaws. So by teaming up with these people, it can create really strong project teams, partnerships, etc. And this is backed up by Carl Jung, who said everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And I think what's interesting here is that often when we come across people who are the exact opposite as us and have different styles, we can find that irritating, and it might come from a place of insecurity or jealousy. It doesn't really matter. The point is to be curious about that, because those traits are the things that you can borrow from these people to make really strong teams. So here are the shadow animals for everyone. So if you're a polar bear, for example, your shadow animal is a clownfish, and vice versa. If you're a dolphin, your shadow animal is a tiger, and vice versa. I'll let a few of you take a picture of that before I move on. So what I recommend you do is, again, later on your way home or whatever it might be, is have a look at the profile of your shadow animal and have a read of it and think, what are the strengths and superpowers that they have that I admire, that I perhaps don't have in myself? And think, who are the people I know in my work or in my life who perhaps have those traits and I perhaps want to piggyback on with more and partner up with more. For example, my wife is a koala, and that's the opposite animal to me. And I think that often helps us when we're having to team up and be this united force against our beautiful but demanding flock of kids. So my rallying call today really is that there needs to be a rewiring of how we evaluate people. We want to be motivating, not demotivating. And I want to put to bed this fallacy of the perfectly well-rounded employee, because They don't exist. And if we do think they exist, then clearly we still believe in unicorns. And what we get when we try to round the edges and make everyone these well-rounded individuals is that we get a bunch of employees who are all very similar. And that means that they don't end up adding value beyond the sum of their parts. It also ultimately means that they become more easily replaceable. And like spherical balls, if they kind of come into contact, they just bounce off of each other. It's jagged imperfection. So this can become our competitive advantage. As I said before, grasp hold of your superpowers. Don't be afraid of your flaws. Lean into those superpowers, because that's what makes your jagged imperfection so much more powerful. And the perfect example of this is some of the famous people who have neurodiversities and have really leaned into that to create their superpowers. So Greta Thunberg has often talked about how Asperger's syndrome is her superpower. It enables her to be laser focused on the climate crisis in a way that she never would have managed if she were more well-rounded. Bill Gates has often talked about how he struggled with ADHD when he was at school, but how he channeled it into programming, and that obviously has led to this mega business of Microsoft that we all know today. And Lewis Hamilton, the 7 times F1 world champion, he also struggled at school sometimes with dyslexia, but he channeled his learning into visual forms, which have really helped him on the track. And of course, if we then take that from an individual level to a team level, it enables us to make these teams of superstars. So like cogs clicking together, suddenly the result is that the sum is bigger than the parts. Some famous examples of that. So in the early days of Apple, Steve Jobs was the visionary founder who was technically limited and quite abrasive, whereas Steve Wozniak was the technical genius who was socially introverted and not really that interested in the commercials. So if Jobs had spent all of his days trying to solder circuits, or if Wozniak had spent all of his time trying to sell or market the Apple I, I don't think many of you would have an Apple iPhone in your pocket today. And likewise, the Beatles. So John Lennon was the cynical avant-garde who was not so musically structured, whereas McCartney was the musical perfectionist who would sometimes veer into safer territory. And so it was Lennon's grit that helped to stop McCartney from being too poppy, and it was McCartney's structure that helped Lennon from veering into territories of unlistenable music. And in these cases, there's often tension. There have been tensions between great couples, as we know, but what happens is you end up with incredible results because they're pulling on each other's superpowers to make special things happen. Even K-pop Demon Hunters has this premise at the core of its story. So for those of you who haven't watched it, it's all about 3 jagged individuals who come together to form this impenetrable force of demon slaying. So Rumi at the top is the leader who's got emotional baggage but brings the team together. Mira is this abrasive character who's fiercely defensive of the team. And then Zoe is that spirit, that creative spark, the emotive warmth that brings them all together. You can tell I have young kids, can't you? And for those who haven't seen it, that heading is a nice lyric from one of the songs in the show. So I just want to leave you with a few questions to ponder. Is your team a richly diverse zoo? So do you have different personality types in your teams that complement each other? Can people borrow from each other's superpowers? Or do you have a lot of the same type of person, having perhaps recruited on traditional ideas of having a certain type of person for a certain type of role? And are your people bringing their superpowers to work every day? Are they being the best version of themselves? Do they know their superpowers? If they do know their superpowers, do they know what their colleagues' superpowers are so that they can borrow and team up with those at the right circumstances? If the answer to any of those questions is no, then please come and talk to us. We're literally dotted over there after the talk, and we'd love to just have a chat around how our animal instincts workshops, people programs can start to tease that out, can start to really unleash people's superpowers and get them working together in the most effective manner to really unlock performance for your teams. Before I give my final thought, I'll provide a final thought from Mr. Seligman, the Mr. Superpowers himself, who said the good life is using your superpowers every day to produce authentic happiness and abundant gratification. A great quote, again, very, very resonant to the time that we're in. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to me. I'll leave you with this last thought. Stay jagged.